So you join me in a 5-door Mini Cooper D hatch, and it's a car I've been driving for a few days now, more on why in another video, and I can't figure out whether or not I like this car. So the purpose of this video is I'm going to go through some of the things that I find annoying and some of the things I like to try and figure out overall if I do like it or if I don't. Now you have to bear with me because unlike most of my videos, this one isn't scripted, so it might not be quite as well finished as say my normal videos, but hopefully it'll still be insightful. So let's get on with it. So what's the car like to drive? Well, as with the other bits of this car, it's kind of a mixed bag really. This is a Mini Cooper D, so it's powered by a 1.5 litre 3-cylinder turbo diesel, and as I've said, this is not scripted, so I believe it's 126 brake horsepower, but I'll correct myself on the screen if not. And that translates to an 0 to 60 time of around 9.5 seconds, I think. And as long as you keep this car in its power band, it does feel quick enough for your everyday driving. But there is quite a caveat on that power band. As this is quite a small diesel engine, the fact that it's turbocharged means you do need to keep it in a very narrow power band, and that is from between around 1,700 to about 4,000. Below that, nothing happens, and above that, absolutely nothing happens. I mean, nothing. Once you pass 4,000 RPM, there is no point in driving this car out to the, I think it's 5,500 red line. So the engine, whilst okay for everyday use, if you're sort of a sporty driver, is ultimately quite a frustrating engine. The biggest problem perhaps though with this diesel engine is, I'm not sure if you can hear it, it's bloody loud, and I think in a car which is modern and kind of sporty-ish because it's a Mini, the diesel engine really diesel engine sound, really subtracts from the experience. Now the engine is linked to a 6-speed manual gearbox, which feels quite nice to use, but it is also linked to a clutch pedal that I can't quite modulate properly. Now I've lived with this for a few days, and I'd have thought I'd have got used to the biting point and sort of when to change up and down and stuff, but no matter how I drive this, I seem to find it a bit jerky, either coming down the gearbox, so say slow for a roundabout, you're going to third, that'll tend to be okay, but you go into second and there'll be an almighty sort of jerkiness, a jerky feeling to the sort of, so when you let go of the clutch. Now that might be because I'm not used to a diesel, but to me it just feels a bit awkward, so there was a bit of a jerk there. It just doesn't feel quite as smooth as you perhaps want it to be. Now this also means that pulling off is difficult. Again, it might be because I'm not used to diesels, but I don't seem to be able to pull off in a smooth way, and I just find that odd. Maybe I need longer to adapt to a diesel, but having driven for a few years and a few different cars, I'd have thought I'd get used to it sort of quicker than I have done really. So there you go, that was me going down to second. It just isn't quite as smooth as you'd want. And you certainly can't rev match because this throttle pedal it has a weird response. But as you can see, well you can't see because the speedo's there, if you use the engine in sort of how it's been designed to be used and stay in that sort of 2,000 to 4,000 RPM, it is more than quick enough and you can make some adequate progress. Another feature with this being a Cooper D with a chili pack, you do have a sport mode and a green mode. I'm not going to lie, I've not used the green mode. I have tried the sport mode though, and it seems a little bit at odds with the diesel engine. It doesn't seem to do much, it just sort of sharpens the throttle response up slightly, which, as I've said, with the slightly narrow power band, sort of only exaggerates the flaw in the engine. But that's me moaning. One thing this car does excel at is going around corners. Now I kind of expected this from a Mini, but I wasn't expecting it to be quite this good. So here's a corner, we'll throw it at it. It's just so composed and it just grips like I wouldn't believe. Now I've had a Renault Sport Clio, I say had, more will be explained in another video, and that didn't feel as composed as this around the corners. You feel like the back's going to come around, you feel like you're going to lose grip, but you don't. This just sticks and gets around them, and it is great fun. I love it in the corners. So here's another one. So it just grips, it's amazing. And there, it feels like the back needed to come round, but it didn't, it just stuck, and it is so composed. It's just a shame that this handling isn't joined to an engine which is more rewarding to use. Now there is a slight compromise to the good handling, and that is that the ride does feel a little bit busy at low speeds. This is something that not only me's noticed, but my dad noticed it when I took him in it as well. When you're at sort of low speeds, little imperfections in the road do make their way into the cabin quite a lot. but once you're sort of up to speed, it is fairly refined. So for me, the biggest area that I struggle with this car is the looks. Now, in isolation, I think it looks good, especially with this black roof and the red bodywork. It kind of looks good and it does work, but I can't shake the feeling that the 3-door would look loads better. This just seems artificially long to me, and you've also got tiny doors and it just looks a bit weird to me. Another problem I sort of struggle with is this area here. So you've already got quite a high ride height, and then you've got this big bit of plastic which only exaggerates that. Again, it just looks a bit awkward. Now, this one does have some nice wheels on it, and with it having the chili pack, you've also got LED headlights and some LED fog lights, and it does look good. But like I say, I think the 3-door would look better, and I just can't shake that feeling, and I'm sorry, but that puts me off it slightly. So another area that I'm not completely sold on in this Mini is the interior. When you first get in here, you might think, yeah, it's in a good place to be, but then you look a little bit closer and it starts to feel a little bit cheap. So this is kind of soft touch and so's that, but then you sort of look at this bit, that's a bit cheap. You look at the doors, that's cheap. The speaker surrounds are cheap. I don't know, it just doesn't feel quite as premium as I'd like. Perhaps that's because this is a low spec car, so maybe I'm being unfair. But it does have the chili pack on it, so that means you've got a few bits. So you've got automatic climate control, you've also got ambient lighting, you've also got this sport steering wheel with the multifunction bits on it, and you've got the half leather sport seats. Seats are nice. The steering wheel did feel a bit sort of firm in the hand when I first got it, but I have grown to like that. But perhaps one thing that I think this car does need is the screen. To me, this whole sort of interface here just cheapens the entire cabin. So you've got a tiny little screen and it's sort of orange. I'll try and get a video of it. And it just, that to me just cheapens this interior no end. I think I'd have to option the screen that sort of fills this circular bit. I'd have to go for that, I think. Now, as well as looking cheap, this also isn't all that easy to use. You can connect your phone via Bluetooth to make phone calls, but you can't play music via Bluetooth. So I've had to sort of get an aux cable for that. And to me, I find that a little bit counterintuitive. Surely if you connect via Bluetooth, you should be able to play music. You know, it just seems to be, it just makes sense. So I find that a little bit odd. I think as long as you're sort of okay with the sort of cheaper plastics, you will be happy with this interior. It's a nice enough place to be. That would just bug me though. So perhaps the biggest reason to get the 5-door over the 3-door is because there's space in the back. And yeah, there is space in the back. I'm 5'11", sorry, and I can sit behind myself. I've got enough knee room and enough headroom. I do struggle getting in and out of this car though. I don't know if you can tell, but this door is quite tiny. So if you open it, it's not really giving you all that much room to get in and out of the car via. Also, as you can see, it doesn't open all that far. So you've got a very small gap to get in. And because of how these seats are, they're quite far back. So say the door sort of shuts there, you've then got to get in and backwards, which it just isn't as easy to get in and out as you perhaps want. So it passes the test for space, but it perhaps doesn't pass the test for ease of access, I guess. Now, from where I'm standing, the only other reason to get the 5-door over the 3-door is because you want a slightly bigger boot and a slightly more practical car. So what's the boot like? Well, unfortunately, I've not done my research, so I can't tell you how many litres you can store in here. But as I always say, what good is knowing how many litres you can store in a car? It's kind of irrelevant. From where I'm stood, this is a decent sized boot. It perhaps doesn't go back quite as far as you might want it to, and it also isn't quite as wide as you'd perhaps expect. It sort of is, it's flush with the lights and stuff. It's okay, but it's not massive. Now with this car having the chili pack on it, you do get a couple of little extra bits of functionality here. So you can lift the boot floor up and there's some space under there to hide things, kind of handy. And you can hook these seats slightly further forward to give you more depth. So how do we summarise about this Mini Cooper D 5-door hatch? Well, I can see why people would choose it because it is economical, it is quick enough, it's fairly practical, and it is distinctly Mini, but I wouldn't buy it. The engine for me is a turn off. The fact it's a diesel, let's see if you can hear it on the microphone. It just doesn't sound right in a car like this. And whilst the performance is adequate if you're in its power band, for somebody who likes driving, it's ultimately a slightly frustrating engine to use. I'd get the petrol, probably the 1.5 3-cylinder turbo petrol. I think that'd be my choice, which is in the normal Cooper. I also wouldn't choose the 5-door. To me, this looks artificially inflated. I just don't really like the way it looks. I think the 3-door is a bit more pure and just looks better. I also would have to get the screen on the inside. As I said, This infotainment system is just a bit, it cheapens the look of the interior to me. The rest of it's a nice package, but that just cheapens it. So I think to briefly summarise my summary, I can see why people might buy this car, but I wouldn't. I'd get a Cooper 3-door with a spec'd up interior. I've been Blee, thank you for watching, please subscribe.